I was 12 the first time I realized my family wasn't normal. Not in the way people said it with a laugh, but in the way you say it after your soul's been stepped on in silence for years. My name's Eric Bingham. I'm 34 now, but back then, I lived in Ridgefield, Connecticut, in one of those pristine neighborhoods where every driveway sparkled and every lawn looked photoshopped. From the outside, we were the kind of family that other people pointed to and said, "That's what success looks like." Inside, it was a corporate war zone. My father, Walter Bingham, was a self-made CEO of Bingham Asset Group, a man who turned everything, including his own kids, into a performance metric. He didn't speak so much as dictate. At home, you were either delivering or disappearing. There was no room for questions, only quarterly results and obedience. My mom, Lorraine, played the perfect trophy wife, blonde, polished, always smiling at fundraisers. But behind closed doors, she'd pat my arm when Dad snapped at me and say things like, "He's under pressure, Eric. He has the whole world on his back." Like that excused him treating me like a defective intern. Quick note, before we go any further, tell us what city or country you're watching from. Then there was Rachel, my older sister, the golden child. She was already a junior analyst in Dad's firm before she could legally drink. Average grades, average ideas, but she understood the game. Dad said jump, she already knew the landing. I got straight A's in calculus, built my own stock tracker in sophomore year, and he barely blinked. Rachel pitched some half-baked marketing concept once, and he toasted her with champagne. She'd smile at me across the dinner table like she felt sorry for me, then twist the knife. "Eric's got a good heart," she'd say, like I was some lost puppy, not a person. She wore Dad's approval like armor and made sure I knew I'd never earn it. By high school, I gave up trying. I stopped staying up late, hoping he'd ask about my grades or care about the math competitions I won. I built a quiet life instead, one he couldn't reach, saved money, read finance books, learned how to work, how to keep my head down, how to disappear. Because in that house, silence was survival, and I had no intention of being collateral damage. So I left at 18, no dramatic exit, no big fight. I just packed my bags, gave a nod to no one in particular, and walked out. I worked nights stocking shelves at a warehouse while finishing my undergrad in finance, commuted 2 hours each way, lived off canned tuna and dollar coffee. But I graduated with honors, top 5% of my class. The day I mailed my diploma home, Dad called. Not to congratulate me, just to say, "Hope that degree does something." That was his version of support. It did do something, actually. Evermont Capital hired me straight out of school. Entry level, nothing flashy. I kept my head down, didn't name drop, didn't mention the Binghams, just put in the work. Within 2 years, I was in strategy, analyzing client portfolios, proposing structural shifts, tightening risk margins. I signed everything with just Eric, no last name. Didn't want it getting me in or out of any doors. From there, I moved fast. 4 firms in 10 years, all legit, no shady jumps, no scandals. I earned every offer with results. I brought in clients worth tens of millions. Advised 2 private wealth restructures that saved portfolios from collapse. Got 3 unsolicited recruitment calls a year. But every holiday, every family dinner, I'd sit across from Rachel in her Hamptons glow, corner office secured, and get hit with lines like, "You still moving around so much?" Or, "Must be nice not having real responsibility." It was never a question, always a jab. Rachel played their game. She made mediocre look golden, wore tailored blazers like armor, dropped Dad's name at every negotiation, and smirked like she'd built something. Meanwhile, I sat through dinners being asked if I was still figuring it out, even after leading a fun transition that made headlines. Then came Maggie. She was smart, real, not from money. We met at a conference in Boston, both presenting, both with drinks in hand by the end of the night. Dated for almost a year. It could have been more. But on her birthday, I bailed last minute. My mom had called me, slurring, crying over the phone, something about the housekeeper quitting and not knowing how to face Walter. I drove over, cleaned her up, fed her water, got her to bed, then sat outside on the porch while Rachel texted me, "Damage contained. Classic mom." Maggie didn't scream when I showed up the next day. She just stared at me, flat, and said, "They don't even like you, Eric. Why are you still showing up for them?" I didn't have an answer, not a real one. We broke up the next week, and still, through all of it, the dismissals, the long silences, the years of being a ghost at my own family's table, some pathetic part of me held on to this idea that maybe, just once, my father would look at me and say, "Good job." Not for show, not because someone else brought it up, just because he meant it. But he never did, and I kept building anyway. Then Harper Finch called. I was coming off a clean project turnaround, real numbers, real growth, and someone from their strategy team had taken notice. They asked if I'd be open to a conversation. I said sure, figuring it was a courtesy chat. It wasn't. It was a damn offer. Senior strategy partner, full comp, equity track, flexible culture, zero tolerance for shady deals. Everything I'd been working toward, minus the ego circus. Only catch? Harper Finch competed directly with Bingham Asset Group in boutique client sectors. Not always, but enough that I knew what the headlines would look like in Dad's head. I thought about it for 2 straight weeks, not just the job, the fallout, the lectures, the cold shoulders, the fake outrage. I didn't want a war, but I also wasn't going to stall my life for people who had already decided I didn't count. So I signed, not out of spite, not to stick it to anyone. I did it because I earned it, and I was done acting like I needed their permission. I kept it quiet, no announcement, no hints, just silence. Then came the legacy brunch. That's what they called it. Some sick joke. 50 relatives, fake smiles, rented prestige at some overpriced country club, assigned seating, monogram napkins, a slideshow of family achievements looping on a screen like a damn investor pitch deck. I showed up late, wearing a navy suit that actually fit me and a face that didn't ask for approval. Rachel met me at the door, holding a mimosa like it was a scepter. "Well, well," she said, scanning me top to bottom. "Didn't think you still existed." I smiled. "Don't worry, I'm not contagious." She fake laughed and turned back toward the crowd, like I was some weird old memory they'd all agreed not to mention. I made my way through a minefield of nods and stiff handshakes. My father didn't even glance up from the corner table where he was deep in conversation with some VP from marketing. Mom gave me a tight smile, then busied herself rearranging fruit platters like she was being watched. The speeches started, Rachel first, of course. She stood up, thanked Dad for his vision, Mom for her grace, and the company for continuing the Bingham legacy in ever-changing markets. There was applause, the kind people do out of obligation, not respect. Then someone toasted Uncle Stan's kid for getting into Yale. Another toast for some cousin who opened a firm in Denver, the usual circle jerk. I let it all roll by until the entrees came out. Then I stood up, slow and steady, glass in hand. "Just wanted to share a quick update," I said. "Made a big career move. Details later." The dinner dragged on after I made my announcement, but I could feel the tension in the air, thick, suffocating. Rachel barely touched her food, instead picking at her salad like the lettuce was personally offending her. I could see her gears grinding, working out how to spin this into something she could turn into a public spectacle later. Dad didn't even look at me. He stared at his plate like he was studying his next move. Uncle Stan launched into a story about some new tech company he was advising, and it took everything in me not to roll my eyes. These people were so obsessed with pretending things were perfect. Rachel leaned over and whispered something to her husband. He nodded, probably saying something encouraging like, "Don't worry, honey, we'll fix it." I caught a quick flash of her smile, like she'd just won the lottery. "Rachel's landing a private equity fund, by the way," Uncle Stan said, voice full of pride. "Nice," I muttered, barely paying attention. "Uncle Stan's son got into Yale," Rachel added, forcing enthusiasm. Dad raised his glass. "Another Bingham success story," he said, voice smooth and approving. The room nodded along like they were watching a scripted play, all applauding the right lines. Meanwhile, I was still sitting there, waiting for the moment to drop the next line. The entree arrived, steak, mashed potatoes, and whatever else they'd ordered to give this gathering some level of class. I wasn't hungry. I'd lost my appetite hours ago. I lifted my glass, calm, steady. "Just signed on as a partner at Harper Finch," I said. "I start next month." And just like that, the room froze. Rachel's fork hung in midair, inches from her plate. Her eyes darted between me and Dad, looking like she'd just bitten into a raw onion. Dad's face shifted from neutral to a slow burn. His jaw clenched. "You signed with them?" His voice was low, dangerous. You just joined the enemy. They're not the enemy, Dad, I said, keeping my voice steady, controlled. They're the future, transparent, clean, ethical. You'd be amazed. That's when it snapped. Dad's face went beet red. He slammed his glass down on the table so hard, I thought it might shatter. You think you can just walk away from everything I built? He growled. You think you can take my name and go play house with some boutique firm? You're using my name for clout, Eric. You're nothing without it. I felt the burn in my gut. I built my own name, Dad. I didn't use yours. My voice was firm now, no more holding back. I earned everything I've got. I didn't need your approval or your handouts. Approval? He was on his feet now, fists clenched at his sides. You think you don't need my approval? You're my son. You owe me everything. This betrayal? You think you're going to waltz into a firm that competes with Bingham Asset Group and pretend it's all fine? No, I'm done pretending, I said, keeping my tone cold. I'm not some puppet in your game. I've played by your rules long enough, and I'm not doing it anymore. Rachel snorted, flipping her hair back, already stepping in like she was the referee. Oh, for God's sake, Eric, stop being so dramatic. You're acting like we don't all have our roles to play. It's just business. No, it's not just business, I shot back, my anger starting to match Dad's. It's your whole damn world. You make everything about Bingham, about your name. You never once cared what I did, as long as it fit into your little narrative of what success looks like. Dad took a step toward me, face twisted with rage. You don't know what it takes to run a company like mine. You think you're better than me, better than everything I've built? His voice was shaking now, but not with fear, with fury. No, I don't think I'm better than you, but I think I'm better off without you. The room went completely still, the kind of silence that screamed louder than any argument could. Rachel shot me a look, like she was trying to decide whether to speak up or not. But there was no need. I had already said everything. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back with a scrape that made everyone jump. I made my own way, and I'm done asking for permission. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need one. I walked out, leaving the table in that suffocating silence, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe. As soon as I turned toward the door, Dad slammed his hand down on the table so hard the wine glasses rattled. The whole room went silent. Not the kind of silence where people are thinking, but the kind where they're holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. Betrayal! He yelled, voice cracking with rage. You think I didn't build this family, this company, so you could just walk away? After everything I did for you? Rachel's voice joined the chaos, sharp as glass. He's always been ungrateful, Dad. You gave him everything, and he throws it in your face. I didn't flinch, didn't even look at her. I turned back toward Dad, dead in the eyes. You didn't give me everything, Walter. You gave me a legacy of corruption, of lies. You've been running a damn Ponzi scheme for years, and I'm not playing along anymore. His eyes widened for a second, like I'd just slapped him in public. Then he snapped, spinning around to face me. What the hell are you talking about? I held my ground, words coming clear, like they had to be said. The client ghosting, the shell firms, the cooked returns. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been bending the law for years to keep that empire afloat, and you've used your family's name to cover up every mistake you made. Dad's fists tightened, his knuckles popping white. You don't know what you're talking about. You think you're some hero now? Some big shot? Everything you are came from me. Everything I avoided came from you, I said, voice steady, cutting through the noise of the room. The room felt colder, sharper. The walls seemed to close in on me, and then, in a flash, his fist flew at me. There was no warning, no second thought. His knuckles slammed into my mouth before I could even react, the force sending me straight to the ground. My lips split instantly, hot blood flooding into my mouth. The taste was metallic, sharp. I hit the floor hard, my jaw ringing like a bell. I looked up, seeing him standing over me, chest heaving with rage, his face twisted with something I couldn't even name. Rachel clapped. It was slow at first, like she was trying to coax the applause out of herself. But when she saw me looking up, blood dripping down my chin, she let out a single, cruel laugh. Finally, she said, smirking, a real Bingham family moment. Mom didn't move from her spot at the head of the table. She just stared at me, shaking her head like I'd disappointed her one last time. Eric, she muttered, barely above a whisper, you should have kept your mouth shut. No one helped. No one came over. They all just watched, like this was some kind of sick performance. The rest of the room might as well have been silent for all the attention they paid to what just happened. I wiped the blood from my mouth, stood up slowly, and took a breath. The pain in my jaw was bad, but the shame, worse. It wasn't for myself, it was for them. For everyone watching, pretending this wasn't happening. But I wasn't going to stay in that room. Not now, not after all the years I'd spent trying to be part of something that would never accept me. I walked out, slowly at first, then faster, just to get the hell out of that place. I didn't look back. Out the door, into the cold, empty parking lot. The night air bit at my skin, sharp and real. I felt the weight of 50 pairs of eyes on me, not one of them stepping forward to say anything, to break the silence. And that was it. The moment everything changed. I didn't need to fight for a place at that table anymore. I drove straight to a hotel 15 miles out, away from the country club, away from the noise of my family's betrayal, away from the anger that kept clawing at my chest. The fluorescent lights in the lobby buzzed in the background as I checked in, paying with cash to avoid any connection to my name. In the room, I stood in front of the mirror, feeling the weight of everything, the swollen lip, the bruised cheek. But there was something else, something sharper in my eyes. Clarity. A kind of peace that had been missing for years. Like the final pieces of the puzzle had snapped into place. I didn't take off my suit, just sat down at the desk, pulled out my laptop, and started organizing the files I'd quietly gathered over the years. The things Dad thought I'd never notice. The fraudulent billing, the shell companies, the inflated returns, all the dirty little secrets hidden behind polished corporate reports. I'd been tracking it all, piecing together the evidence bit by bit when no one was looking. It wasn't just that Bingham Asset Group had played fast and loose with the rules. It was that they'd built their empire on lies, lies that I had kept quiet about for too long. I made 3 calls that night. The first was to a forensic compliance auditor I'd met through a former client a year ago. He owed me a favor for some work I'd helped him with when his firm got caught in a minor scandal. I didn't waste time. "I've got a case for you," I said, laying out what I had. "I need someone who's willing to dig deeper than the surface." His response was immediate. "Send me everything, I'll meet you tomorrow. If what you've got is as good as it sounds, we'll make some noise." Next, I called a white-collar crime attorney I'd helped on a fund recovery 2 years ago. She was sharp, relentless, and had a reputation for turning small cases into high-profile ones. "Eric," she said when she picked up, recognizing my voice. "I didn't think you'd come to me with something like this. But if you've got the goods, I'll back you. I'll move on it, and I'll get you what you need." The last call was to a financial journalist I'd worked with on a few inside pieces in the past. He owed me a favor, too. We'd traded information before, always carefully, always off the record. "I'm about to put the pieces together," I told him. "I need you to help me tell the story when it's time. It's big." He didn't hesitate. "I'll start writing, but you know how this works. I'll need the proof." By the end of the night, I had a plan. The 3 of them were ready to meet in 48 hours. The auditor would go over the financials, the attorney would begin preparing the legal side, and the journalist would start working on a feature. Everything was aligned. Everything had a purpose. For the first time in years, I slept like I hadn't in 2 decades. No anxiety, no stress, no pretending. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that, finally, I was taking control of my own path. And this time, I wasn't asking anyone for permission. The first meeting was with the compliance auditor. He showed up at a quiet cafe, dark suit, briefcase in hand, looking every bit the part of someone who could tear down an empire with a few clicks of his keyboard. I slid the files across the table to him, no words wasted. He flipped through them, his eyes scanning the details. "This is more than enough," he said, his voice low, as if afraid someone might overhear. "I can trigger an SEC inquiry with this. These are the kinds of red flags that get people indicted." I nodded, but didn't say anything. I had known that already. I'd lived with the weight of that knowledge for years, but hearing it from him, from someone who had the power to make it happen, made it feel real. The pieces were falling into place. A few hours later, I was on the phone with the attorney. She was sharp, no nonsense, always in control. "I've got the photos, the witness list, and the medical report," she said, voice tight. "We can file assault charges, Eric. With everything you've got, it's a solid case. He won't walk away from this one." "Do it," I told her, my jaw clenched. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I didn't need her to care about how it looked. I needed action. Next, the journalist. I sent him the files, careful not to leave a trace of my involvement. He called me later that night, his voice a little too enthusiastic for my taste. "I've got the angle," he said. "We'll leave your name out for now, but the evidence, it's explosive. I can feel the pressure building already." I wasn't sure if I wanted to believe it yet, but I did. I'd played the long game, and now the first steps of the strategy were in motion. Within a week, I was getting texts, emails, and calls. None of it good, but all of it moving the pieces in my favor. The first blow came when Dad got served. A process server showed up at his office, handed him the papers. I didn't even have to be there to see the rage boiling in his eyes. It was done. The SEC inquiry, the assault charge, the dominoes started to fall. Harper Finch backed me 100%. They moved my start date up, made sure I had the time I needed to deal with the fallout. They didn't say much, but the silence spoke volumes. I wasn't just another hire anymore. I was a part of something bigger, something real, and that meant they were on my side, completely. Meanwhile, Bingham Asset's partners were demanding an emergency meeting. Word had spread like wildfire, and they were scrambling to figure out what to do next. The phone calls started coming in too. Some of my extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, flooded my inbox. Some were furious, some were supportive. They picked their sides, just like they always did. And then there was Rachel. She called once, her voice cutting through the phone line, full of venom. "You've ruined everything," she spat, barely letting me get a word in. "Do you have any idea what you've done? How this is going to affect all of us? You're the disgrace of this family." I listened, stone-faced. "I'm not the disgrace, Rachel," I said quietly. "I'm the one finally telling the truth." She didn't say anything after that, just hung up. I stayed quiet publicly. Let the system do the talking. I didn't need to justify my actions to anyone. The pieces were in motion, and I was finally in control. And when the first waves of the storm hit, when Bingham Asset Group's name started to sink, when the press started sniffing around, I let it all play out. No statements, no interviews. I didn't need to explain myself. Not anymore. All I needed was to watch. It didn't take long for the walls to start crumbling. Within 30 days of everything coming to light, the SEC had launched an investigation into Bingham Asset Group. It was like a domino effect. Clients started pulling out in droves, their phones ringing off the hook with concerned investors asking about the allegations. Major players in the finance world knew what this meant, and they didn't wait to jump ship. By the end of the week, the company had lost more than $100 million in client assets. The internal whistleblower came forward next, the tip-off that would seal the deal. The person had been buried in Bingham's financial department, witnessing the fraud from the inside for years. They handed over everything, emails, documents, even confidential memos. They confirmed every shady practice I'd uncovered and then some. This was bigger than I had imagined. It was the kind of stuff that would take down entire firms, not just individuals. Rachel's team jumped ship first. They had no loyalty left. I guess when the money runs dry, so do the morals. One by one, they scattered to other firms, using their Bingham connections to secure higher-paying roles, at least those who still had a name to salvage. And then came my mother. It wasn't a surprise when she packed up and left. I think she was waiting for the right excuse. She moved into a condo a few miles away, filing for divorce almost immediately. The reason? Irreconcilable humiliation. As if her entire life had been based on the approval of other people, not on what was real. Rachel tried to salvage what little she could. She pivoted into tech finance, hoping her family name would still carry weight in the Silicon Valley circles. But she didn't count on the blacklisting. People didn't want Bingham's name anywhere near their deals, and as soon as the press started digging, she was persona non grata. Investors and firms alike were wary. Even with her pedigree, the Bingham name became toxic overnight. Dad's fall was the hardest to watch. He didn't go quietly. The arrest came not long after the charges started piling up. He was taken in front of the press, the story on every major network. They cuffed him in front of a crowd of photographers. The sight of it, the man who built an empire from nothing, now a criminal. It was sickening. The court date was set. Bail was posted by some family friend who stopped answering calls 2 days later. I'm sure it wasn't a friend at all, just another accomplice bailing out as soon as they could. and Bingham Asset Group, it tanked. The board tried to salvage what they could, but it was too far gone. The company was sold for 40 cents on the dollar to a second-tier firm out of Chicago. All the deals they'd worked so hard to fake, all the lies, suddenly meant nothing. I didn't celebrate. I didn't call anyone to gloat. I just kept my head down. At Harper Finch, I focused on my work. I built trust with my new team. No one cared about the past. I kept out of the press. Let the silence speak for itself. Let the truth slowly tear through the surface. It did its job. The quiet destruction was far more powerful than any headline or speech I could have given. No one in my family called. No one reached out. I'm sure they were all too busy salvaging what they could, trying to fit back into their old lives, pretending nothing had happened. And me? I was fine. I didn't need any of them anymore. My career was better than ever, and for the first time in a long time, I was finally living my life on my terms. 6 months later, I'm living in a smaller city now, a place I chose. No family ties, no legacy, just me building my life the way I want it to be. The people around me respect me for who I am, not what name I carry. And for the first time in a long time, that feels real. I haven't spoken to Rachel, haven't spoken to Dad either. There's nothing left to say. They're somewhere in their own version of success, whatever that looks like now, with all their shiny new deals and toxic connections. Let them keep pretending. Mom sent me a letter, part apology, part denial. She wrote how much she regretted what happened, how she wished I'd understood her more, but there was no real acknowledgement of what any of this cost. It was all about her. I read it once, then tossed it. I wasn't interested in their version of peace. Not anymore. I go to work each day knowing I'm not hiding who I am. No pretending, no faking. The bruises from that night faded, but the impact, that stayed. Not in a bad way, though. It grounded me. Turns out when you stop begging for crumbs of validation, you learn to build your own damn table. And that's what I did. The friends I have now? Solid, honest, no status games, no pretending. They've seen the ugly, the real, and they still show up. That's the difference. The people I've kept close, they're worth more than any silver-plated name. The career? Better than ever. I've earned respect, not through anyone's last name, but by doing the work and doing it right. The foundation I built at Harper Finch is solid. I'm leading teams now, making real change. People trust me, and I trust myself. The anger? Gone. Not because they deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. I let the system do the talking, and it did its job. My life isn't a reflection of their chaos anymore. I didn't destroy the family. I exposed the rot they covered with silverware and smiles. I didn't need to tear them apart. They did it to themselves. I chose truth. I chose myself. And I'd do it again tomorrow.